This is episode number 156 of the Guns Magazine podcast. Hi there, and welcome to the Guns Magazine podcast, one of the shooting world's biggest gun talk programs. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent Wheat. Thanks for joining us as we talk to the interesting folks who make up the world of shooting, hunting, law enforcement, and the firearms industry. But first, here's a quick word about our sponsors. The presenting sponsor of the Guns Magazine podcast is the R7 Mako by Kimber. The R7 Mako is a high-capacity polymer frame striker-fired micro-compact from Kimber. Here's just a taste of what you get. 12 and 14-round total capacity with the flush and extended magazines, while the performance carry trigger has the smooth pull and clean break you'd expect from a high-end single-action handgun. The R7 also comes optics ready, or you can have it with optics already installed. Kimber's R7 Mako will feed your appetite for something different. See how at r7mako.com. The supporting sponsor of the Guns Magazine podcast is Craft Holsters. Craft Holsters specializes in production of custom leather holsters for semi-autos and revolvers. Their main mission is to provide every responsible gun owner with a truly custom holster experience at a very reasonable price. Check them out at craftholsters.com. Today's show is about something that seems pretty simple until you realize you've been doing it wrong. I'm talking about MOLLE and PALS. No, that's not some kind of kid's show. It's a modular system of load-bearing equipment we've all seen on everything from packs to rifle scabbards. In this episode, I talked to John Boyette, a product manager in the firearms industry who's an expert on the whole system. During our chat, you'll understand the history and purpose, along with discovering some great tips on how to make MOLLE work for you. Now, here's John Boyette and everything you wanted to know about MOLLE, but were afraid to ask. Well, good afternoon, John.
Hey, sir. How's it going?
I'm talking with John Boyette. He is a product manager in the firearms industry, and John has quite a varied background. John, rather than me describe it, why don't you let folks know basically why you are the guy to talk to today?
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for the introduction. So I was in the Army from 96 until 2005. Majority of that time I served with the 82nd Airborne in the job of being in the infantry, and got out in 2005 on a medical separation. Within that time, we did the Sinai for a peacekeeping tour in 98, did Kosovo in 2001 under peacekeeping, then had the fortunate chance to go to Iraq in 2003 on the initial invasion. Once all that was complete, I got out, like I said, 2005, did firearms instruction. I had a company at that time that name was Trace Armory Group, now out of business, but I did that until 2018 as a part-time job. And as you alluded to, I did nuclear security. I was working for a utility as armed security officer at the nuclear power plant, did the armed security gig there, did adversary stuff, and then jumped in the firearms industry around 2014 with a company that's out of business now. It's called War Sport Industries, where we had LVOA rifles and other guns. Then I came back into the firearms industry here recently in 2019 as a product manager now.
Among all those things you've done, you are a subject matter expert on our topic today, which is MOLLE gear. And when the subject was first proposed to me, we've got some of your gear that I've been reviewing, and we'll be covering it in the magazine. But it was one of those things that I thought, how complicated can it be? It's pretty straightforward. There's not much to know about it. And then when I started researching our talk, I realized I was so completely wrong. I didn't know anything about it. I've used the terminology incorrectly. I've probably used the product really incorrectly many, many times. And the more I researched it, the more I realized that there's a lot of stuff going on here, and we really do need to talk. So hopefully our listeners today can get some background on it and get the right way and not the wrong way to use MOLLE. So starting out, I did learn that MOLLE, and it's MOLLE, is modular, lightweight, load-carrying equipment. You know, the military and the government loves acronyms. But there's also a term that I heard a lot and I've used interchangeably is PALS. And honestly, I didn't know the difference. And that's the Pack Attachment Ladder System. And that's all the tapes that are on the gear and all that. But rather than me explain it, John, talk about, give me some of the history behind all of it.
You're absolutely correct. So when you think of the system, you have basically a male and a female system. And so PALS is the female system that is a set of 1-inch webbing that is horizontally routed on any item. It could be a plate carrier, it could be a belt, it could be a hunting vest, it could be your backpack. We all see those Camelbacks, or we all see those Blackhawk bags, or we see all these items that have that horizontal, like 1-inch piece of webbing that has stitching every 1.5 inches on it. We may take a carabiner and you may snap your keys on it or something. That is PALS. That's what that is, which is the Attachment Ladder System. That's what that is. That's the female portion of MOLLE. And so then what MOLLE is the male portion. And so if you have a pouch that is MOLLE compatible, that pouch has pieces of webbing, and those pieces of webbing are weaved inside the female portion that's on your backpack or on your hunting vest. And when it's weaved through the PALS and through the pouch, that makes the system connect. And when that connects, you have now attached your MOLLE pouch to your PALS system. Now, what's really nice about that is you can get as custom as you want. So if you had a pouch that is designed to carry a pair of binoculars, let's say, and it's 5 inches tall by 4 inches wide and it floats out by 2 inches, right? You could MOLLE an AR-15 magazine to the front of that pouch, and now you have a custom pouch system that's for you, because you could take any combination of any of those items and use that MOLLE system and build any custom gear that fits your scenario that you can envision. And that's where the product is really cool. The other nice part about it is that if a system is MOLLE, it is standardized. So brand A, B, and C are all compatible with each other. So if you own a tack shield like Razor MOLLE pouch, or if you own a high-speed gear taco, those items are compatible. So you could have an entire family of different brands, and you can interplay those to build your custom kit.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the main reasons it has become very popular in the civilian community, because beyond just war fighters, like you said, if you need binoculars on your backpack, it's a great way to attach it. And it's such a simple system that anybody that can operate a sewing machine could theoretically come up with something that is PALS compatible.
Yeah. So like I have right now at the house, I have a Edenbrock low profile backpack that carries my bolt gun in it, right? And my bolt gun has a detachable magazine. So I was able to take a magazine pouch and MOLLE that onto that backpack, and now I have a place to store those magazines for that rifle. And the gentleman that invented that backpack never envisioned me putting that there, but he was wise enough to put PALS all over that backpack, and I can just take whatever I want. If I want to take a bino pouch and stick it on that backpack, if I want the magazine or whatever, it's totally, and then I can stick it on there. Now, what's really, really nice is that any time I can take it off and go back to its original configuration as far as that backpack goes, or turn it into something else, which is really, really nice.
And before we get too much further, though, let's talk a little bit about the history. This system came about officially in 1997, and it really got popular after 9/11. But its predecessor that I've got a lot of experience with is the old Alice system that was very popular in Vietnam. That was the load carrying system. What was the impetus behind coming up with PALS and Molly? So why did they decide that we need something newer, faster, better?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So, there is a family of military load-bearing equipment that has had its generational drive since basically right after the Civil War. When we went to a centerfire cartridge, ammunition, from that moment forward, it changed the way that load-bearing equipment was designed. Mm-hmm. And so you really get the major change, which is the most current one that we still see, is the M1956 with the LCS. That system was a combination of what World War II and the Korean War duck webbing gear that we think of with the belt with the little eyelets in it and stuff. Mm-hmm. That whole system was brought around in 1956, and they made it compatible with that. What they did with that compatibility was they used a metal attachment sliding device on the back that would allow you to open it up and then take it off the belt and maybe attach that pouch to your backpack. That was the first design of what Alice eventually became into. There was a lot of M1956 and what became M1967, which is what is, you think of the Vietnam War, where it went from that cotton duck material more to like a nylon. Mm-hmm. And that was the evolution there. In the M1967 and Alice, which is what a lot of guys think of the 70s transition out of Vietnam, that Alice system for the European theater is compatible with the older stuff going back to the Korean War. So Alice was a very interesting system where it was a 2-inch tall piece of webbing that was sewn on the horizontal, and it had vertical channels that were sewn into it, and you would use that little metal clip, and you would clip the pouches into that piece of webbing. Now, there was a lot of issues with that. Those metal components would break because it has 3 or 4 of the subcomponents built into that clip, and therefore you'd have one of those that would break or so on. Like when I came in the Army in '96, we were running Alice, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I got to the 82nd, we would remove all of those Alice like metal components, and we would take 550 cord and we would tie our pouches to our belts, because when you went on long road marches and you were out in the field, those metal components were up against your BDU top, and it was very uncomfortable, and you would get blisters from walking, and that piece of metal sliding against that fabric would cause a friction point. Yep. So we removed all of those. You tie it down with a cord that didn't have that issue. So that's kind of what Alice was. Now, Alice is very interesting. So even to this day, there are organizations that are in the airborne community still issue Alice packs. They still issue those actual rucksacks from a 70s design. Wow. I was on Fort Bragg 2 days ago, literally, and I actually saw guys that were out getting their physical fitness training and carrying the same Alice pack that I actually carried in the late 90s. So those things are still out there. And so what the big transition was Molly, right? And so there was a bridge between it, which was the LBVs, which is funny. I have an LBV right here behind me in my truck because I actually love those things. So the LBV was a load-bearing vest, and you may remember seeing pictures of the 1989 invasion in Panama, mm-hmm. and you would see Marines and soldiers with this camouflage, vest. and it had magazine pouches that were held on their torso, and then they kind of had like an Alice belt with different pouches on it. That was the LBV. Fast forward a bit, when I got in the 82nd, and we were having our M203s, which is a grenade launcher, we had the LBVs that held those 40 Mike rounds. We didn't have a Molly system. We were still using that LBV on the 203s.
Well, I think I've got a couple of those around here someplace or down in the storage area. But, well, that's fascinating, the evolution. But let's get back into current with Molly. And
Yep.
It is such a basic system that, again, you don't think there's much you can go wrong with it. But what do you think some of the most common mistakes or misunderstandings are when people are trying to use it?
So the biggest thing that I see repeatedly is they don't understand how the weave of the male straps is done. A lot of people will have a Molly pouch, and they'll look at the back of it, and they'll see that there's a 4-inch or a 6-inch strap, and they'll take their item that has pals on it, and they will route it through the top slot, and it will just continue to route it all the way through to the bottom, and then they'll just flip the pouch down, and they'll snap it.
Mm-hmm.
And now what you have that male portion tunneled through the pals, however tall it is, 6 inches or 4 inches. And then when you grab the pouch and you separate it from that item that it is connected to, there's a gap. There's because that male portion is not weaved, it's just routed through the pals.
Right.
They didn't weave it through the pouch. And so so you can separate it, you can see this big gap, and then it comes unvelcroed, it comes unsnapped, and you're like, I don't quite understand how this works, because it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. This doesn't make sense, you know what I mean? And it's not anyone's fault, because you're not born knowing how to do this. I mean, no one is born knowing how to clean a rifle, right?
Right.
You have to be shown how to do it. And so that's where that actual disconnect is. And I would say that to fix that, what you do is that you take your pouch, put it in the first tunnel, which is on the pouch, put it through, and it's a 1-inch piece of material, and then you pull it through that bottom of that 1-inch piece. And once you get those legs through there, you then route that Molly strap back through the pouch.
Mm-hmm. And
you keep this weave, this in and out, through the item and through the pouch, through the item and through the pouch. That weave, and when you get to the end, it should not be easy to finish the last weave. It should be very difficult, because there's no vertical lift on that Molly at all. It's not uncommon to have to get a pair of needle nose pliers to try to finish that last bit. That's normal, actually. And then once you connect it, there is no gap. There is no error. That is a solid connection.
Well, I was sitting here laughing because I have made that very mistake of, you weave like the first one. It's like, well, this thing's flopping all around. What's going on here? And I remember,
right.
I don't remember the specific situation, but when I finally thought, if you weaved, okay, now I get
Absolutely.
it. But I think you raise a really important point here that I misunderstood, that I thought this was a quick release system. You should be able to just rip those pouches right off and all that. And it's completely the opposite. If it's properly mated, it should take a little bit of work to get it on and get it off, right?
Absolutely. Depending on the connection, there's all types of ways that Molly strap can be constructed. You could be made out of webbing material. It could be made out of a polymer. It could be made out of all types of things. And so the reason why I bring that up is because depending on what is used can be a level of difficulty that can go from absurd to absolutely, I'm throwing this thing in the trash can. Because it just depends on what it is, you know what I mean? And it can, in that comparison, that's why you kind of might need a pair of needle nose pliers. You might want to have a couple minutes to put this thing together, because once you get it going, it is locked in there once it's finished.
Yep. And that leads right into my next question, which is, there is webbing, there's Molly sticks and clips and malice clips and all kinds of stuff. What's the best way to go there? Or is there one?
I think it all depends on what your end state is and how you foresee your usage. If you are a normal, everyday civilian and you buy a Molly system, it really doesn't matter because most of them are of good quality. Some of them are better. Some of them aren't. But most of it is in good quality. And it'll last you forever because you're not using it that often. I mean, you're just not. You know what I mean? If you want to look at someone who may be going on an expedition, if you're going to go hunting up in the mountains, well, every ounce adds up to pounds. So when you start looking at that, maybe those polymer Molly straps is not the best option because you could go with a Tac Shield branded item. You could go with some of the Blue Force gear items that have an extremely lightweight. There's some on Tactical Tailor that are super lightweight of those three brands, and you can easily save. You know, when the whole ensemble's done, you could save 2 to 3 pounds just in the attachment systems.
Yep.
So if you're going up in the mountains and you're going to be hiking a lot, that adds up. You know what I mean? If you're never going to do that, then you know, you can use whatever you want, you know. A lot of the systems I have seen folks look at the new lightweight, extremely durable options, and they don't like the idea of it because, you know, you could pick up a pouch and it weighs 3 ounces and it doesn't feel like you're buying anything. It doesn't, there's no substance there for what it feels like. But that's why it costs the price it does, because it's the performance and the technology. It's so to get that item from a 9-ounce weight pouch to a 3-ounce weight pouch. You know, there's a lot of technology there, you know, and it depends on what you put the value on, you know.
Well, we've talked about all the advantages, and there are many to this system. Any shortcomings of note?
Absolutely. So Molly is a even number system. It's either 4, 6, or 8 columns. Each one of those numbers represents inches. So it is a 4-inch, 6-inch, or an 8-inch on the back attachment system. There are ways to mathematically adjust that. There are a lot of Molly belts that are down to a 1.75-inch belt, but that manipulation of that geometry, you know, is a little bit of the give and take compared to a 3-inch belt and then you can modify that geometry also. So there is a little bit of limitations on that weaving component. The other component is for some items you have to purchase a back conversion kit if you want your pouch to be at a 45-degree angle, because it's all vertical, right? There is no horizontal. It's all vertical up and down. Well, if you want it to be at a 45, you have to put a bridge item that's between the, let's say, the backpack. Then you weave in this item, and then the front of it's at a 45. Then you put the pouch on at a 45. Same thing for a 90. So if you don't want the pouch on a vertical axis, you want it on a horizontal axis, you might have to have a conversion pouch that will convert that over. Makes
sense. So here's probably the critical question of our interview is when somebody's looking at buying Molly gear or PALS gear, there's countless manufacturers of that type of gear out there, everything from real low budget knockoffs to real high end stuff that you kind of wonder, is it really worth that kind of money? What should folks be looking at when they're picking up a pouch or a pack or a belt and trying to decide, is this something I want to spend my money on?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. And in my opinion, your first bracket should be, what is your end state? What are you trying to accomplish? Figure out what that is first. And then personally, I would go for American made only. There are a lot of American made brands out there, in that there's a lot of American made companies that make Molly pouches for law enforcement and for the military. And so, you know, if I have to look at a at a object that I'm using. This is just my personal bias, right? You know, I'm a civilian now. So if I was going to buy a plate carrier, let's say that has MOLLE, and I say due to whatever reasons I feel like I need a plate carrier, the day I put that plate carrier on and I have to use it, I don't want a piece of trash.
Right.
There's a reason why I'm putting on a plate carrier. I'm not having it to show my friends. It isn't in my safe. And look, I actually have armor. No, if I'm going to have a plate carrier that I'm going to wear, there's a legitimate physical threat to me or to my family for me to put it on. And if I want to do that, I want an American-made item.
Yep.
If I'm going to sit there and I'm going to put my magazine pouches on that plate carrier, I'm going to have a belt that I'm supporting my home defense gun. I don't want a communist-made item. I want American-made. So that would be my filter, where I want something that I can trust.
Amen, brother. Amen. And, you know, I've said it many, many times on the podcast and throughout everything I do is, the older I get, the more I understand buy once, cry once, because of all the junk stuff I've got, holsters and knives and all that stuff that are in the junk box or have been sold off. It's because I tried to cut corners, and it's pretty rare cutting corners ends up being worthwhile in the long run, especially as, like you said, when you're talking about stuff that, you know, self-defense or self-protection, it makes sense to spend a tad bit more money and get something you know what you're getting.
And sometimes that tad bit of money is not even the difference. I mean, it's the difference between buying a sandwich or not. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of the American-made, you know, tactical gear, you're only looking at a delta of like $8.
Right.
Maybe $12. Maybe $12. You know, we aren't talking $100 jump here. I mean, I could go buy a import pouch for, you know, let's say $18.95, or I can buy an American-made like tax shield pouch, the exact same thing, for $21.
Yep.
Only looking at a $3 delta. It's not a huge choice, but it makes a great difference when I think of the people that we are employing and the people that you are keeping the industry going forward with. I mean, it's a big deal.
Any closing thoughts, John, as we wrap this up on Molly and her friends?
No, I'm very excited to be able to share this information. You know, there's a lot of good blogs out there that talk about Molly and how to attach things. There's a lot of good YouTube films out there. So if someone is interested in learning more, there's a lot of good like data points out there to check out. And I would just say that, you know, if you don't know what brands to buy, I would say that your best bet is always to look towards the military exchanges. If you look at AAFES or the Marine Corps Exchange, you might not be able to buy there, but you can see what brands are specially catered towards the military, and that can help you choose on what the quality brands are.
Excellent advice. And I would add the same thing to some extent in law enforcement. Look at what some of the big agencies are using.
100%. 100% right.
Well, John Boyett, I have learned much today. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
John Boyett really knows what he's talking about when it comes to Molly and Pals gear. I hope you learned something from our talk. If there's a topic you want to hear, somebody you'd like us to interview, or you want to share your thoughts, please drop me a line at editor@gunsmagazine.com. As always, you can find us on your favorite podcast directory, YouTube, and at gunsmagazine.com. And of course, while you're online, don't forget to check out our great sister publications, American Handgunner Magazine at AmericanHandgunner.com, AmericanCop.com, and our numerous special editions available for sale on our websites and at Amazon. And don't forget to check out our new presenting sponsor, the R7 Mako by Kimber. Learn more at r7mako.com. That's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. For the entire staff at FMG Publications, I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat. Now get out there and get shooting.